Breaking news! Something just happened at Ravens camp that left everyone confused, and it involves Lamar Jackson. One moment, he's the center of practice. The next, he's out. And the explanation we got, well, let's just say it raised more questions than it answered. Add to that some unexpected movement from a former Raven and a potential surprise on defense that nobody saw coming. What's really happening behind the scenes in Baltimore? But before we move on, make sure you hit that like button if you're a true Ravens fan. It's always amazing to see fans of all ages supporting this team. And if you feel like it, comment, "Go Ravens," because this season is already heating up, and it hasn't even started yet. Let's jump right into the fire. Lamar Jackson reportedly left practice holding his wrist, and fans immediately feared the worst. Social media erupted. Was he seriously hurt? Was this a replay of past seasons where one player's health shifted the whole trajectory of the year? Then came the conflicting reports. First it was his wrist. Then the Ravens PR man Chad Steele claimed Lamar got his foot stepped on. So what's really going on? John Harbaugh came forward and told us the story that many wanted to hear, but some fans still aren't buying it. According to Harbaugh, Lamar had his foot stepped on during practice, received an x-ray, and the results came back clean. No damage. He was held out of the next practice due to soreness, and that's it. Simple as that. But let's be real, how many times have we heard he's fine only for a player to end up sidelined for weeks? And here's where it gets interesting. While Harbaugh gave clarity on the foot injury, there was absolutely no mention of Lamar's wrist. That part, still unaddressed. So the question remains, was this just a harmless foot issue, or is there something more going on that the Ravens aren't ready to reveal? And look, let's not forget the Ravens' history with injury transparency. Over the past couple of seasons, Harbaugh has actually been pretty solid when updating fans on player injuries, which gives some hope that this really is just a minor setback. Still, the silence around the wrist adds a layer of suspense that's impossible to ignore. But in the midst of the uncertainty surrounding QB1, a couple of other positive updates started rolling in. Cornerback Jaire Alexander, who hasn't practiced since early August, was spotted doing workouts on the side field. That's big. Anyone who's followed Ravens training camp knows that once a player moves to the side field, it typically means they're on the brink of returning to full team activities. And let's be honest, we don't need Jaire suited up for a preseason clash with the Commanders. We need him full go when the real bullets fly against Buffalo in Week 1. The reinforcement on defense doesn't stop there. Jadeveon Clowney, the former Raven and veteran pass rusher, is back in the conversation. Aaron Wilson reported that Clowney is actively talking with teams and expects to sign before the season kicks off. Now, there's no confirmation yet that Baltimore is in those conversations, but Bleacher Report has predicted a reunion in September. Think about what that would mean. With David Ojabo still sidelined and Adisa Isaac dealing with his own injury, bringing in a guy like Clowney would be a strategic depth move. He wouldn't take snaps away from guys like Kyle Van Noy or Mike Green, but he'd bring that battle-tested toughness that you can't teach. It's a no-brainer if the price is right. And speaking of injuries, the Ravens also got some clarity on fullback Pat Ricard. He's been missing from practice for a few days, and fans were starting to worry that maybe something serious had crept up. Harbaugh explained it's a soft tissue thing, but Pat is expected back next week. Now look, those soft tissue injuries can linger, and we've seen that script before, but if Harbaugh's timeline holds true, Ricard will be back in time for game prep. It's crazy how the narrative can flip within 24 hours, from full-blown panic over Lamar to cautiously optimistic updates across the board. But the reality is, we're still walking a tightrope here. Until we see Lamar back on the field, flinging passes and taking reps, there will be questions. And that lingering doubt over his wrist? That's going to hang in the air unless someone steps up and addresses it directly. So let's pick up right where we left off, with Lamar Jackson still out of practice, and that wrist question hanging like a storm cloud over an otherwise sunny press update. We're told it's just a foot, but if it was only a foot, why was there all this commotion about his wrist in the first place? Fans saw him holding it. The reports from the field weren't just imagination. And when Harbaugh gave his injury update, the wrist was never mentioned once. Now, that silence could mean two things. One, it's really nothing, and the Ravens didn't feel it even needed to be addressed. Or two, they're being selective with the information they release, trying not to cause any unnecessary panic. And that's where the Ravens' injury history comes back into the spotlight. We've seen this team downplay injuries before. We've seen players rule day-to-day miss weeks. We've heard he's doing fine turn into out for the season. So while the fan base wants to believe Harbaugh, and there's plenty of reason to, there's also a healthy amount of skepticism. And that's not negativity. That's what happens when a team's injury handling in the past has led to confusion and disappointment. So until Lamar's suited up, helmet on, throwing bombs at practice again, there's always going to be a little anxiety lurking in the background, especially when we're this close to Week 1. But injuries aside, the Ravens have to keep moving. The preseason is heating up, and roster battles are getting intense. One of the biggest? That fourth wide receiver spot. Tylan Wallace, Tylan Walker, Anthony Miller, all battling for a role that could be a difference maker in this offense. And then there's Leonte Wester, flashing on special teams, trying to carve out a spot. Based on what we've seen so far, Tylan Walker might have the edge. He stood out the most, and the investment in him is clear. Wallace is hanging in there, and Miller, likely headed to the practice squad unless something dramatic changes. But it's clear this WR room has depth we haven't seen in Baltimore in years. And it's not just the receivers making noise. The linebackers are getting in on the action too. Trenton Simpson and Teddy Buchanan have been turning heads, and there's talk about Simpson taking over the role Patrick Queen left behind. Buchanan, a dark horse, maybe even a hidden gem, especially with coaches like Zach Orr and Chuck Pagano watching closely. And don't sleep on Jay Higgins either. He's been showing flashes that could land him in meaningful snaps this season. The defensive backfield? It's stacked, with Jair Alexander coming back soon, and Malachi Starks, Marlon Humphrey, Kyle Hamilton, Nate Wiggins, and possibly even shifting Marlon into safety roles on certain plays. The versatility is off the charts. It's the deepest secondary this team has seen since the glory days of Chris McAllister and Samari Rawl. And fans are dreaming big, some even saying if this unit doesn't get to the AFC Championship at the very least, it'll be a huge disappointment. But let's be real, this team isn't chasing just the conference title. It's Super Bowl or bust. We've seen too many years of almost. Too many years of if only. This is the window, and with the talent on this roster, anything less than hoisting the Lombardi will feel like a failure. And if you want even more intrigue, how about this? There's a growing wave of fans calling for a blockbuster trade. Micah Parsons. Yep, Cowboys star linebacker. Some fans have floated insane trade packages involving Mark Andrews, Adafiola, and picks to land the superstar pass rusher. Now, is it realistic? Not likely, but it shows just how hungry this fan base is for that missing piece. Someone who could dominate the line of scrimmage, force turnovers, and shift the playoff narrative that's haunted this team for years. Of course, you're not landing a player like Parsons without giving up significant assets, first-round picks, major cap space, and potentially even foundational players. But the fact that fans are even entertaining it shows how desperate Baltimore is for postseason greatness. It's not about adding just any player. It's about building a roster that can survive a brutal AFC and come out on top. This defense already has its Avengers-like cast. And with the front seven showing flashes of dominance, the secondary ready to shut down any aerial attack, and guys like Mike Green injecting fresh energy, there's reason to believe. But that belief has to translate into production, into sacks, picks, and stops in key playoff moments. So now we turn it over to you, the flock. With Lamar's status still slightly uncertain, and questions lingering around depth and injuries, how confident are you in this roster heading into Week 1? And do you think this defense truly has what it takes to be elite this season? Let me know in the comments, and if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to the channel, hit that like button, and check out the videos on the screen to stay locked in with everything Ravens.